game nearby requires my attention.
And don't forget this!
We can continue once I get back.
Pawn siege the palace.
What the?
Moonlight tape.
Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and on today's episode of CN Unit Analysis, we are going to be taking a look at the brand new S-Rank agent in Zenless Zone Zero version 1.1, Electric Stunner Qingyi. Now, Qingyi has been out for more than 24 hours at the time of this recording. Hopefully, most of you guys have been able to get our hands on her to try her out yourselves in the trial mode, or if you're lucky, then manage to get the proof for her, right? For me, I am going to be essentially going through some of the more interesting topics as well as findings from the CN community. Because you guys have seen from the early access video as well as the buffs, Qingyi's kit, her functionalities, how exactly do we use her, flash connect, enhance heavy attack, which team, all this kind of stuff have more or less been covered in the previous videos, and there has not been too much changes as of the current live version of Zenless Zone Zero version 1.1. So I'll be just kind of going through some of the more interesting points that may or may not be refreshing to you guys from the CN community. So without further ado, let's get into today's content.
Subscribe!
Alright, so Qingyi fundamentally, what exactly is her role? One of the benefits is that she is a very versatile stun unit, which you can pretty much run into most, if not every single attack unit, and they can perform up to par. Maybe some units they will be performing better than others, such as for example burst DPS like Zhu, it might be more synergistic compared to a sustained DPS or on-field DPS like Ellen, but nonetheless Qingyi is definitely going to be able to work excellently with all these units because her kit itself is already of a very high quality. Mainly due to this 80% stun damage multiplier, which is currently one of, if not the highest stun damage multiplier in the entire game, bar none, unless they were to release something that even stronger in the future. So for now, because of this reason and how quickly she can use Flash Connect, enhance Moonlit Blossom, and the overall flow of the kit, she is definitely a very versatile unit that you can run for casuals, for hardcore players, for a lot of team comps. She's pretty much there. Not to mention, with the latest buffs, as you can see from the thing over here, not to mention, as you guys can see from the latest buffs, right before the version went live, Qingyi definitely is more or less consolidated as one of the best stun units that we have in Zenless Zone Zero right now, compared to Koleda, Lycon, and definitely compared to Anby. One potential weakness is that when you're up against a electric enemy, when you're using Qingyi, then you might face a little bit of an issue, right? Because, you know, resistance definitely still plays to a role. So take that into consideration when you're using against the enemies. Also, if you're up against enemies that are more synergistic or rather prefers team comps that are relying on ice damage, such as Ellen, or enemies that are weak to ice, then Lycon is definitely gonna be able to come up a little bit more, especially due to his ice rare shred when you're gonna be pairing up with an ice DPS, right? So there are also some scenarios where Qingyi is not always the best at every possible circumstances. Now, this is gonna be some of a comparison between Qingyi and Lycon. These are gonna be the changes between the original Qingyi and this is gonna be the post-buff Qingyi. Initially, beforehand, if Lycon against non-ice enemies are at a baseline of 100%, then Qingyi slightly outperforms when it comes to the stun damage multiplier. It originally used to be 60%, and now it has gone up to 80%. So this is a 124.39% more damage will be dealt during the stun phase compared to Lycon with no ice enemies. And this is going to be roughly breaking at 10%, or rather stunning at 10% faster speed compared to Lycon. However, if we are going to be comparing this with an enemy that has ice weakness, then if you want to consider the ice rare shred or how synergistic Lycon is with Ellen, then Lycon may come up a little bit more. So take that into consideration. So in summary, Qingyi definitely is one of, if not the strongest stun unit we have current game now. I don't think anyone else is going to be debating with this, and she is pretty versatile. Preferably you want to run her with a burst DPS like Zhu, but if not, you can definitely run her with Ellen as well. Sustained DPS, she can still work completely fine. So for players, should you be pulling for Qingyi? If you do not have any S-rank stun agents such as Koleda or Lycon, and you just refuse to raise Anby for some reason, then you definitely can try to consider pulling for Qingyi, especially if you do have Zhu in your arsenal. However, if players already have raised an Anby and you already got either Lycon or Kaleda, then her value is not as important compared to a player that only has access to one stun unit, right? So based on opportunity cost, do as you please, because currently as we were stand right now, Zenless Zone Zero's endgame content is not to a stage where you need to wail to be endgame content, right? So do based on your needs. Alright, Qingyi's kit, I've already mentioned this in my previous videos, so I'm not going to be going through a lot, but basically these are the 3 most fundamental principles within her kit. Her core skill, her basic attack, as well as her EX skill, right? These 3 will be the one that I'll be going to be using a lot, or they are the ones that has the highest daze damage multipliers, which will allow you to daze the enemy or stun the enemy as fast as possible. So prioritizing leveling in your core talent into your basic and skill will be recommended. For your dodge, assist, and ultimate, these 3 points is not that important. If you have the extra points, you can go ahead and raise them, but otherwise it's not that important, right? You still want to prioritize focusing on your basic skill as well as core talents first. Between these 3, the one that is slightly more important is probably going to be your dodge counter, because Qingyi does perform dodge counter pretty frequently. If you can see from the count of the previous footages, you are pretty immobile, and it is part of Qingyi's kit to dodge counter and react to the enemy's attacks before you get hit. Even though she does have the additional 40% reduced damage taken, you still want to perform dodge counters in order to make sure that you don't really break out from a combination and continue on your base attack tree as well as your enchanted Moonlit Blossom to ensure that your flash connect drives, your heavy attacks, your base attack, it all flows very nicely, right? And they are all kind of connected during your dodge counters, especially if the enemies are going to be hitting you. So this is going to be seeing the highest amount of uptime. Parry, or rather the assist point, the parry point, it might not be that useful because Qingyi, most of the time you are going to be using her on field. You're not likely going to be swapping out here and there that frequently. So this will probably be the least important. For the ultimate, Qingyi's damage multiplier is not that bad, but the daze damage multiplier is also not that important because the enemy is already dazed during the chain attacks, right? So, and you're probably never going to be using Qingyi's ultimate because you want to save your ultimate for your main DPS, right? So for these reasons, this one is probably going to be the most important. But all these 3 pale in comparison compared to your core talent, basic attack, as well as your EX special skill. So with regards to how Qingyi work, I'm not going to be going through too in-depth. You can kind of take a look at the previous early access videos. Stacking on your subjugation stacks up to a maximum of 80% will allow you to get the absolute highest damage percentage against the enemy target. So it will be in your best interest to raise up these points, right? For your additional core talent, which is basically when you run Qingyi with like an attack unit or unit from the same faction, you do gain up to 600 points of raw attack. But keep in mind, Qingyi's personal damage so far, unless you already have an absolutely insane relic, or rather absolutely insane drive disc that you have prepared for Qingyi, don't expect her to be dealing that much damage. I'm going to be talking about when exactly should you be going for raw attack and when exactly should you be going for crit rate / crit damage, right? So there's going to be a pretty decent ratio, so take a look at that later on. So very briefly, in summary, Qingyi's kit is using your basic attack tree to charge up your flash connect. Once flash connect reaches 100 points, 75 to 100 points, let go of your flash connect, pass your enchanted Moonlit Blossoms, hit the enemy, and during any point of time, if you're going to be able to get hit over here, you can either use a dodge or you can use your skill to kind of prevent yourself from getting hit, and then resume back to basic attack 3 or enchanted Moonlit Blossom, which is your enhanced heavy attack, right? So this is kind of like the rotations with Qingyi. Pretty much every single time against mobs, against elites, against bosses, you're always going to be using the exact same rotations. One cool thing to note, as you can see from this clip over here, is that Qingyi's basic attack tree, it actually does have an innate grouping mechanic that kind of brings in the enemies closer together. So it is another pretty decent quality of life that you are not going to be able to experience with units like Anby, right? So another sort of things that players can take into consideration. I feel like one of the more important aspects that Zenless Zone Zero units have is not only from a unit's like damage output or sustain, but also generally, and this is a very, very important point, how comfortable it feels playing a unit. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt, Qingyi is one of the most comfortable dazers that you're going to be playing compared to any of the dazers I've tried. I've tried Kaleda, Lycon, Anby, and Qingyi is definitely super comfortable. So take that into consideration when you're pulling for her. So one question that players may have is, when do we let go at 75% flash connect or 100% flash connect? Generally speaking, if you're up against elites or mini bosses or mobs where you're gonna be able to stun them in a single hit, That means that you are not going to be able to stun them with 2 different flash connects. Then charging up to 100% would be ideal for you so that you can actually reach the stun phase as fast as possible and swap into your DPS to perform a chain attack. But if you're up against like a boss target, usually they have very high daze bars. They attack very frequently, which means that it is even more difficult for you guys to actually get to 100% before dodging or casting a flash connect, right? So in this kind of like boss scenarios, most of the time you might end up using 75% instead of 100%, just be more reactive to all of the boss attacks coming your way. One excellent example is going to be when you're playing the brand new shield defense. It is no longer timed. It is based on how tough, how powerful the boss hits are, and you definitely have to be very receptive as to dodging, parrying, all kinds of stuff, right? So TLDR, generally mobs and elites use 100%. For bosses, realistically you are going to be using 75%, but if you can hit 100% and there's no risk to hitting 100%, then feel free to go for it, right? So that's going to be that. Now, this is a pretty interesting topic, the comparison of Anby with other stun units. There are a lot of factors that goes into beyond just how quickly you can daze a unit or how much damage your team can do during this daze window, or even like the unit's movesets themselves. Like Koleda's movesets is mostly tied to a skill and enhanced attack. Lycon is pressing and holding his skill. Anby is dodging, attacking, basic attack, skill, basic attack. So it really depends, and it's not a black and white situation as to who is better or who is worse. But some metrics for you guys to consider. This is gonna be the daze value or long chain combination. So in one usual full chain, these are gonna be the values output by each unit. So for Qingyi, she stands the highest at 42.71, Anby at the lowest at 38.18, Koleda at the second lowest at 38.97, and Lycon at 39.26. So this is going to be one potential factor that you guys want to consider, but Qingyi being the absolute highest when it comes to how quickly she can daze a unit. On top of this, we also have a 80% stun damage multiplier, and under normal circumstances, when the enemy is at 150%, you can see that for Qingyi compared to Anby, she allows our DPS during the day stage to deal 53.3% more final damage, assuming the exact same rotations. This is compared to, for example, if you're using Lycon and you are against an ice enemy, that means Lycon's ice ratio is going to be useful for us. Then it's going to be 49.03% additive. If it's not ice, then it's going to be 23.33%. Koleda at 6.66%, and Anby is going to be at the baseline of 0%. So from both how quickly you can daze a unit, as well as how much more damage you can do during this daze window, you can see that Qingyi is miles and miles ahead compared to Koleda and Anby, and slightly better compared to Lycon if you're going to be pairing up Lycon with ice DPS such as Ellen, right? So take that into consideration. Now, but that being said, there's also one more factor you guys want to consider before jumping into, because Qingyi is like better in daze, more damage, that's basically the best unit in everything. There's one interesting consideration, which is your damage cycles rotation of the fight. This is actually a very interesting point that even I myself didn't thought of, which is basically if during a boss fight, I'm just going to be taking critical note as an example, if you are able to kill the target in, let's just say, like 3 daze rotations, which means you perform your chain attacks 3 times, you daze the unit 3 times, then if you use that as the benchmark, can Qingyi allow you to kill the boss target or any target lesser than 3 rotations, which means you defeat the boss in 2 rotations plus a little bit more of splash damage. Do you still need 3 rotations to defeat the boss? You get what I'm saying? It's a little bit like Acheron's ultimate damage. If there is less than 1 HP on the remaining mobs, your Acheron's ultimate damage is still going to be wasted on these mobs with 1 HP. This is a pretty interesting concept, which is, even though there can be a pretty big disparity between in terms of daze speed as well as increase in damage during the daze window, it will definitely depend between enemies to enemies if you're comparing Qingyi with units like Lycon, Anby, and Koleda. So if right now, if you're using Anby and you are defeating an enemy in, let's just say, 5 stun cycles with your current build, for example, if you're using Anby, Julian, and Nicole, you're defeating the enemy in 5 damage cycles. So during each burst window, let's just say outside of burst window, you're using your Anby to be on field dealing damage. And during your burst window, your Zhu does like 200,000 damage. So the enemy has a 1 minute HP, right? Theoretically speaking. Whereas if you were to slot in Qingyi, now your Zhu does like 250,000 damage, which effectively means it saves you 1 stun window. You will now need only 4 stun windows to kill the enemy instead of 5 stun windows. So in this comparison, you can kind of see Qingyi definitely has a very, very obvious increase in terms of value compared to Anby, because you essentially save an entire cycle worth of stun duration, as well as the time it takes for you to get to the stun duration, right? So that's where Qingyi's value truly shines. But if you are in a situation where you are using Lycon or Coleda and you are already defeating the enemies in 4 stun cycles, it is not too slow to the point where you need the 5th stun cycle. It is also not too fast to the point where Qingyi allows you to kill the unit within 3 stun cycles. That's where if you use both Qingyi and, for example, Lycon and Coleda, and you kill the same enemy in the same amount of stun cycles, then the difference in value might not be very obvious to the player, right? So hopefully what I said makes sense to you guys. Okay, yep, so this is like a graphical representation of kind of what I'm saying over here. I use a pretty in-depth example. This is a more simplified version. So assuming you used Anby and Zhu, you have the attack phase and the daze phase, right? So this is where you are going to be using Anby to deal with the daze bar, and this is when you're going to be using Zhu to deal during the enemy when he's stunned. So if you defeat the enemy in these 2 cycles, but if you were to slot in Qingyi, so now that you slot in Qingyi, your Zhu does more damage. The enemy health is the same, right? 100,000 HP, 100,000 HP. But now that you deal more damage during this daze bar, however, you are still defeating the enemy in the same number of stun cycles. You're still taking 2 stun cycles to defeat the enemy because Qingyi doesn't give your Zhu enough damage to kill them in 1 cycle, for example, right? For example. So in this scenario, the value of Qingyi can be seen over here. How much time you save from the additional damage you're dealing from this stun window and this stun window combined. Because these 2 windows combined, it is higher than these 2 windows combined and B, right? So this is the time you save for one example over here. Then this is where, if this is another example that I was saying just now, if you took 3 stun cycles to defeat the enemy with Anby, but you only needed 2 stun cycles to defeat the enemy with Qingyi, then this entire 3rd stun cycle, you get to save a drastic amount of time, not only inclusive of the chain attacks, but also the amount of the time it takes for you to break, to build up the daze bar, right? So this probably will save you anywhere between like 20, 25, or even 30 seconds. Whereas this small window over here maybe only saves like 5 seconds, right? So this is one of the examples that I don't think enough people have been talking about. And I'm so glad that the CN community actually brought this up. So not indicative of how strong a unit is, but just some food for thought. Think about it. Do you really need this unit to change everything? Or rather, does this unit change everything for your current setup right now? Can you S rank critical node? Can you not S rank critical node? What are the reasons why you couldn't? Were you that far off, or were you just a little bit off, right? So think of it based on your account progression before just putting. Of course, I am talking about only from the meta perspective. If you're only putting for Qingyi because of like waifu reasons, and sure, go for it, nobody's gonna be upset at you. Alright, so like I mentioned just now, Qingyi's team comps is definitely going to be one of, if not the most versatile stun unit that we have in this current moment. Pretty much any attack unit, you can just slap it on Qingyi, the additional 10 will activate, and they're going to be good to go, right? But of course, between all of these attack agents, some agents work better than others. One example being Zhu. Zhu just works absolutely synergistically with Zhu Yuan and Nicole. This is currently the strongest DPS team that we have right now. In fact, it is far stronger compared to a Lycon, Sokaku, and Eden setup if you're going to be using these 3 against these 3, right? So something you want to consider if they are both up against the right element. But of course, fundamentally, Zenless Zone Zero, it is still pretty reliant on elemental weaknesses. So just because this team does more damage than Alan's team doesn't mean that this team is omnipotent, because if your enemy, they are weak to ice, then using an ice team definitely will do much higher damage, right? So take that into consideration. Now, some other units that you can kind of consider with Qingyi, these are the pretty much non-limited DPS units or standard units or A rank agents that you can kind of run with Qingyi. All of them definitely do benefit from like Qingyi's 80% stun multiplier, as well as how quickly she can daze the target, right? So they're all pretty good. Now, unfortunately, Qingyi and Nico Mata doesn't really synergize that well because Nico Mata, her kit is basically you want to stack on Assault. So whenever you trigger Assault on the enemy, Nico Mata's EX special skill will deal a much higher damage multiplier. And unfortunately, Qingyi doesn't stack Assault, right? So not very synergistic. In the future, if we do get a physical breaker or a physical daze unit, then it is going to be much better compared to other stuff, right? Qingyi with anomaly teams. Now, I have mentioned in my early access, there might be a potential that Qingyi could work with anomaly teams such as Jane Doe or such as Grace, but now upon further discovery, it seems that it is unfortunately not very synergistic because number one, Qingyi and Grace, they both share the shock anomaly, and when Qingyi does shock damage with her base attack 3 or her enchanted heavy attack, it will contribute towards the anomaly bar, and as we know, the anomaly damage is based on the anomaly proficiency from your main anomaly unit. So if your Grace anomaly proficiency is much higher, like 300, 400, whereas your Qingyi's anomaly proficiency is only at like 100, it would take a combined value of these two units and then apply the shock based on these two units, right? So because of this, Qingyi being on the field will actually weaken Grace's anomaly team. So generally speaking, for all anomaly teams, not just for Qingyi, you kind of just want to go all in anomaly without even considering about daze, just to make sure that the units attacking the enemy target have as high of an anomaly as possible, so that when you actually proc the anomaly, be it shock, be it assault, they can all do the absolute highest damage possible. So that is going to be that for your consideration, right? Second of all, both Qingyi and Grace, they are kind of units that are on field, right? Qingyi wants to be on field dealing daze, while Grace wants to be on field applying shock. So it really kind of clashes with one another, and I can foresee future anomaly teams like Jane Doe. If she wants to be on field a lot, then she's definitely going to be able to clash with Qingyi as well. So unfortunately, Qingyi is not going to be very suitable for anomaly teams. But for players who are intending on building anomaly units, then you can consider skipping Qingyi and just wait for Jane Doe or even future anomaly supports, right? So that's going to be that. Now, can Qingyi be a main DPS? Unfortunately, for a M0S0 Qingyi, her performance is very suboptimal. The multiplier is just way too low, and the kit just does not synergize as well as compared to all of our other limited or even non-limited A rank agents. They can all perform much better in terms of a raw DPS, main DPS output, right? So just run Qingyi as the dazer and she's pretty much good to go. Alright, so for Qingyi, you have two different ways to build about her. The first way to build Qingyi is kind of like the more easier version, the defensive version, the casual version, where you just give her a impact main slot on your 6. Right, your slot 6, you give her impact, and then for slot 5 and 4, just give her either HP or defense, just to make her beefier, and then she's gonna be good to go. Because as we know, we cannot give Qingyi any sort of like impact subsets from our drive disc, right? We can only get it from the main stacks. So frankly speaking, the subsets on Qingyi completely does not matter at all. As long as she can survive, the impact is gonna be exactly the same. No changes whatsoever, right? It is not affected by attack, it's not affected by crit rate, crit damage, penetration ratio, anomaly, whatever. It is just impact, right? So because of this, a very simple Qingyi is just slot 6, impact, everything else, Mega Tengi, she is good to go. Right, so for the 4-piece, one recommendation is going to be the 4-piece daze. Definitely going to be the highest amount of days you're going to be dealing. Another recommendation is going to be 2-piece energy regeneration, just to make her rotation feel a little bit faster. Otherwise, you can also consider going for the 2-piece electric damage, just to increase our damage a little bit, since number one, Qingyi is going to be on field quite frequently. Number two, if you are going to be farming for the 4-piece impact, then the 2-piece electric is going to be a byproduct. Then you might as well just use it at the same time, right? So that is going to be one reason. And another reason why you might want to consider running a 2-piece electric is going to be when you're building a DPS Qingyi. Now, if you are going to be building a DPS Qingyi, that's going to be crit rate / crit damage on your slot 4, electric damage or attack percentage on your slot 5, and the same impact damage on your slot 6. Now, this is only recommended if you have a good enough crit rate / crit damage, or rather you want Qingyi to be dealing the highest amount of possible damage, and you can just forsake her health defenses completely just for her to deal as much damage as humanly possible, because you're confident with your ability to dodge enemy attacks or parry the enemy attacks, right? Because like I mentioned, even though Qingyi has an anti-inter of 40%, if she gets hit, especially by a boss unit, a heavy attack, she's still gonna get interrupted and it will deal a lot of damage, right? So only recommended for players who know how to dodge and parry with Qingyi. for your stab stats, and I guess this kind of goes into at what point do we go for a crit rate, crit damage Qingyi instead of a all-in attack Qingyi where you forsake crit and just go all-in attack. Okay, so this is a recommended ratio for Qingyi if you want to consider building a crit rate slash crit damage, right? So if you have achieved 68.2 crit rate and 136.4 crit damage, or roughly around this ratio based on 1:2, then feel free to go ahead and add crit rate slash crit damage for Qingyi, and this is gonna be the absolute best end game Qingyi setup for the highest damage, highest daze, best rotations, best team damage, all that kind of stuff. But if you do not hit this ratio, you're very far off, like 10-20% crit value off, then feel free to just go all in attack. Forget about the crit rate stab stats, crit damage stab stats, just go all your attack slot 4, electric damage slot 5, as well as impact damage slot 6. Now the reason why you kind of want to go for electric damage over attack percentage is because if you are running Qingyi with enough impact, especially with her signature weapon, you are going to be getting almost close to 600 attack, which is roughly, as you can see from just now from the video. First of all, slot 2 gives you 316 attack, then from the signature weapon as well as all the attack, all of these circumstances gives you a combined total of 916 attack raw, right? So this is equivalent to 62% attack percentage, which is far more than we need, and we only get 20% damage percentage if you give her the signature weapon, right? So because of this, electric damage does give you a higher benefit compared to attack percentage. Then, like I mentioned, if you're not going to be going for a DPS Qingyi, you want to just chill, casual, HP defense, then for the substats, it legit does not matter. As long as she has the impact slot 6, then she is good to go. Now for our Qingyi's weapon recommendations, I'm gonna classify into 2 different W engines. This one is gonna be based on our daze multipliers. So based on our daze multipliers, it turns out that the skeleton, the fossil, which is the A rank W engine, at maximum coverage of 32%, it gives you 112.24% higher compared to our baseline of the signature W engine. And this is gonna be 24% coverage, which is the average of 32 and 16%. And this is gonna be Lycon's W engine at 3.4% higher, because it turns out that for Lycon's W engine, it actually works with Qingyi's basic attack tree. So every single second, you are able to gain 1 set on Lycon. I'm not sure if this is intended or if this is a bug, but yeah, so you can see as of this current moment, it shows that based on this testing, the daze damage multiplier actually does go up every single time you hit with your basic attack tree. So turns out that Lycon's W engine might be outperforming Qingyi herself. But like I mentioned, this is based on our daze damage multiplier. This is not based on our team-wide damage, right? So take that into consideration. Then our signature weapon is going to be at 100%. 99.98, this is going to be if we are assuming 60% for the entire duration, right? Which is going to be 0.02% lower than the signature W engine. And this is going to be Koleda's weapon, calculated based on 1 stack. Then this is going to be the steam pot. Not too far off as well, only at 2% and 5% slower, but this definitely will change the rotation of how you use your skill, right? Because you want to make sure that you get close to maximum energy before you let go to get the highest amount of days possible. And this is gonna be the W engine from the Battle Pass, which is not that recommended, and this is gonna be Anby's one, which is also not that recommended. So TLDR, the Precious Fossilized Core is gonna be the most recommended free-to-play option. Otherwise, for the S-rank agents, you can go for the IJ teapot for the highest team-wide damage increase, or you want to stun a little bit faster, you can actually go for Lycon's the Restraint, right? Because this actually works for every single one of Qingyi's basic attack trees, right? So that's pretty interesting. All right, now this is gonna be how much damage your team is gonna be dealing with W engine. And now when it comes to this regard, then Qingyi's W engine is definitely going to be rank 1 at 100%, pretty much getting the full stacks. Then Lycon's W engine is going to be at 98.36, based on the fact that we gain 1 stack every single time you use your base attack tree. Unless they change this, then Lycon is going to be a very close substitute, right? Then Anby's one is going to be 97.57, then Koleda, import, and all that kind of stuff doesn't really matter that much. This is based on the damage. So let's kind of ask yourself, which one do you want more? Do you want to daze faster, or do you want to deal more damage? And then according to your needs. I would say, me personally, getting the steam pot more than enough. And if you're eventually gonna be lucky enough to get a Lycon W engine, if you use it, not that important. I would say not super game breaking based on what I've seen so far. Right? Cool. Alright, then when it comes to Qingyi's Mindscapes, I think there isn't really too much to be said. Whatever I want to say has already been said in the early access review from Qingyi. But basically, Qingyi's Mindscape 1 will be the most comfortable quality of life when it comes to her over rotations. First of all, you enter into battle with absolute highest flash connect, instantly letting go of your enchanted Moonlit Blossoms, and you also stack on your flash connect faster at 30% rate on top of the 15% defense reduction. So in terms of value, M1 is definitely going to be the highest value for the low spenders, or rather the dolphins, right? So that's going to be for consideration. Between M1 and S1, me personally, I think M1 does hold a little bit more value, but you also must consider it costs more polychromes to get one copy of M1 instead of one copy of signature W engine. So take that as you will. Then for our crit rate, also not that important. Team-wide damage increase with this 15% defense reduction is going to be 18%. This is with the flash connect drive being improved as well. Alright, then Mindscape 2 is gonna be changing from 80% stun multiplier to 108% stun multiplier at the absolute highest stacks. And once you get the absolute highest subjugation stacks, you also increase the daze value cost by 50%. But in reality, it doesn't really change a lot because, like I mentioned, it is in terms of how many numbers of enchanted heavy attacks you need to break the target. Most of the time, with or without this 50% daze multiplier, you're still gonna be breaking the target within 2 cycles, right? Base at 3, enchanted heavy attack, base attack 3, enchanted heavy attack, you're pretty much going to be breaking almost every single unit. So this 50% attack more or less does not change a lot, right? So that's going to be there. The more important factor is definitely going to be the stun damage multiplier increase, increasing theoretically by around 10 to 12% final damage increase. So take that into consideration if you think this is going to be worth it. Then for your 3 and 5, not too much to be said. Mindscape 4, give you a little bit of shield just to get a little bit more comfortable, don't get hit, as well as this additional bit of energy. Also not very important, doesn't really change a lot of things. Mindscape 6 is pretty much the one that is going to make Qingyi deal a lot more damage with 100% crit damage as well as 20% res down. So in terms of team-wide damage increase, this is going to be a roughly 17 to 25% damage increase depending on if the enemy is weak or strong against the element, right? So very considerable. And if you are going to be building a DPS endgame Qingyi build, this 100% crit damage is definitely going to increase Qingyi's personal damage by a pretty considerable margin as well, right? So for our Qingyi, it's going to be at a whopping 42% higher enchanted heavy attack damage, right? So very high. Take that into consideration if you're going to be putting for the Mindscape 6. Overall, I would say that at Mindscape 6, you can definitely start building a main DPS Qingyi. But if you are just thinking of which one is worth it, between M1 and S1, M1 is better, but S1 is technically cheaper, so take that as you will. Now, in the end, as a very versatile stun unit, Qingyi, you can run her with almost every single team. You can perform exceedingly well with burst DPS like Zhu Yuan. So even at M0S0, she's gonna be an excellent agent to have in your arsenal. With that, we have come to the end of today's content. Let me know what you guys think of Qingyi. Do you guys wish to pull for her? Are you gonna be pulling for her? Is she satisfactory? How is her performance so far in Zenless Zone Zero? The word of the day is going to be Wuju, W-U-J-U. Because I saw the trailer, it reminded me she's a Master Yi. A little bit of brain rot, it is what it is. So that's gonna be that. Let me know what you guys in the comments below. Join Discord, join Twitch, join YouTube. Hope you guys have fun with Qingyi. All the best for your gacha pools. Hopefully this guy has been useful. Changing the concept a little bit, changing the format a little bit, just to give you guys a little bit more value instead of regurgitating the same shit over and over again. So that's gonna be that, right? So yeah, that's all I have for today. Now see you guys next time. Take care.